We'll get started in bridge pose, coming onto our backs. Feet on the floor, knees bent. Arms will start right along the sides of your body. Check in with your triple S. Feel the back of your skull on the mat, your shoulder blades, and your sacrum right above your tailbone. We'll press into the feet, curl the tailbone up toward the heels, and then really squeeze your glutes in order to lift the hips into a low bridge. Staying low so that we can focus on activating the glutes and finding our neutral pelvis, one that's not tipping forward or back. So we'll imagine our two pelvic points, the bony parts right at the front of our hips or our pelvis. Feel like those two pelvic points could draw in toward each other. And then imagine your pubic bone, the front of your pelvis, lifting up toward the belly button. Arms will stay along the sides of your body. Take one more breath here, really squeezing the glutes. On an exhale, slowly lower the upper back down, middle back, and lower back until the sacrum comes back down to the ground. Interlace your hands behind your head. Draw your elbows in towards your face. Take a big inhale here, making sure the sacrum stays down. Exhale, curl up off your shoulder blades. Tuck your chin in towards your throat. Think about leaning your head back into your hands without lowering back onto the shoulder blades. Look down at those two pelvic points. Imagine that they could draw in closer toward each other. Inhale to lower. Exhale, curl up off the shoulder blades. Chin towards your throat. Look down at the pelvis. Imagine that your pelvic points could draw in. Now look at your belly button and imagine that your belly button could pull down toward the ground. Inhale to lower. Adding on, exhale, curl up off your shoulder blades, chin towards your throat, belly button pulls down. We're going to turn our rib cage 1 inch to the right. Try to stay lifted off that right shoulder blade. Come back to center, inhale to lower. Exhale, curl up off your shoulder blades, chin towards your throat, belly button pulls down. Turn your rib cage 1 inch to the left. Try to stay off this left shoulder blade. Come back to center, inhale, lower. One more each side. Exhale, lift up off your shoulder blades, chin towards your throat, lean your head back into your hands, belly button pulls down. Turn 1 inch to the right. Stay off that right scapula. Back to center, inhale, lower. Exhale, lift up off your shoulder blades, tuck the chin toward the throat, belly button pulls down. Turn 1 inch to the left, try to stay off that left scapula. Come back to center, maybe lift a tiny bit higher. Inhale to lower. Release your arms to your sides. We're gonna make our way into quadruped, coming onto hands and knees. Shoulders will come right over your wrist creases. Walk those knees in so your hips are right over the knees. Lift your throat. Think about a broom behind your back. Would the broom touch the back of your skull, your shoulder blades or your scapula, and your sacrum right above your tailbone? We're going to find our neutral pelvis here just like we did for bridge. So imagine those two pelvic points drawing in toward each other and your pubic bone lifting up towards your belly so that we're really holding that neutral pelvis. We'll unweight the right knee. So just lifting that right knee up and begin to circle that right hip. Make some small circles in both directions without letting the whole pelvis move. So we're really just trying to move that right hip joint, that ball and socket joint without turning the pelvis, and then lower that right knee down. Lift the throat again. Think about that broom behind your back as you unweight the left knee. Make sure right away we haven't tilted the pelvis side to side and begin to circle that left hip. Both directions, make it as small as you need so the pelvis doesn't move. Lower it down. Start to move through your cat-cow. You can take this at any pace that feels good. Tipping the pelvis forward and back. Warming up the spine all the way from the lumbar spine, our low back, to the cervical spine if you're involving the neck. Come back to that neutral spine. Lift your throat again. Tuck your toes, lift up for downward dog. We're gonna lift the pelvis up as high as possible and walk the feet in a little bit closer so that we're not too wide in our downward dog. We wanna be able to keep the weight in the hands and really lifting our hip creases up, right where our thigh bone meets the hip. Think about lifting those hip creases up without straightening the legs so we can find more of that hip flexion. If it feels good, pedal the feet out. Maybe bending one knee at a time. You can move the hips around, whatever feels good to warm up this downward dog. From downward dog, we're gonna walk our hands back to our feet, sitting back into the hips, working on that triple flexion of the ankles, knees, and hips. Think about that broom behind your back so we're not rounding or collapsing. Long spine, really use your glutes as you press into the feet, rise to stand. Walk to the top of your mat, and we'll check in with our mountain pose. Drawing those pelvic points in, lifting the pubic bone to the belly button so that we're not tipped forward in the pelvis. Reach the arms forward and up. As the arms lift up, really reach your shoulder blades up toward your ears. As you exhale, sit back just like that happy squat. Knees end up right over the ankles as we hinge all the way forward. Step your feet back to a plank pose. Lift your throat here. Imagine that broom behind your back. You can lower the knees right away. One more moment here in plank. Lower your knees. Lower the rest of the body in one piece. Keeping your head of your arm bones away from the ground so our shoulders don't drop forward. We're gonna bring the forehead all the way down. Arms will come along the sides of your body. Now right away, we wanna lift the low belly up. Imagine that your belly button could lift up away from the ground. Chin will stay toward the throat, and we'll start to peel the shoulders even further away from the mat. Keep that lift in the belly and really squeeze your glutes. Hands come back under your shoulders. You can either lift back to downward dog, or if it would feel better, you can take a child's pose, or you can stretch out your back with cat-cow. Any of those three options for the next breath or two. On your next exhale, if you're in downward dog, bend your knees and we'll walk the feet up toward the hands. Coming back to the top of the mat in that bent knee forward fold. Always working on hinging at the hips as we fold forward. Press into your feet, rise up to stand. As the arms lift up, lift your shoulder blades up toward your ears. Exhale, sit back, hinging at the hips. Think about that broom behind your back. Step back to your plank. Knees can be up or down in your plank. Lift your throat so the head doesn't drop down. Draw those pelvic points in. Squeeze your glutes. Lower your knees. Work on lowering the rest of the way down with control, keeping your shoulders away from the ground. Forehead comes down. Arms come to the sides of your body. Lift that belly button away from the ground. Squeeze your glutes. Peel the shoulders away. So we're starting to draw those shoulder blades in toward each other while we keep lifting the low belly. Hands come back under your shoulders. This time we'll lift back to quadruped, coming back to hands and knees. Right foot will step through your hands. Left knee stays down. Lifting up for that low lunge. Check your pelvis here. Make sure it's not tipping forward or back. Find that neutral pelvis, just like bridge pose. Imagine those two pelvic points drawing in. Reach your arms up. As you reach the arms up, lift the shoulder blades up toward the ears and really firm this left glute. We're going to take our right arm and swing it down and open and then back up. Swing that right arm down and open and back up. You can do this at any pace that feels good. Maybe adding a little bit of that rotation in the ribs as you swing that right arm back. But make sure there's very little movement, if any, in the lower body. So we're holding that neutral pelvis, keeping that left glute nice and strong. Lower your hands down right under the shoulders. Right leg will slide back, toes will start on the ground. Squeeze that right glute and then lift that right leg up. Draw those pelvic points in again. Bend your knee, flex your foot. Lift your throat. Think about that broom behind your back, and we're going to start to pulse this right glute. So it might be teeny tiny. It might not feel like it's moving at all. That's okay. We want to make sure we're using the right glute and not the hamstring. So a good trick is to just help that brain-body connection. Just think right glute, so that we're not relying on the hamstring to do the moving here. Lower it down. Left foot steps through. Low lunge, right knee stays down. Lift up, check that pelvic bowl. Again, make sure it's not tipping forward or back. Zipper that pubic bone up toward the belly button and really firm this right glute. So the more you firm this right glute, the more of a stretch you're going to get in the front of that right hip. Reach your arms up. As the arms reach up, imagine lifting that whole rib cage up and away from the pelvis. Keep that feeling in the ribs as we swing the left arm down and open and back up. Again, do this at whatever pace feels right. Allowing a little bit of that thoracic rotation in the ribs as you turn to the left. But try to limit any movement in the pelvis. So we're really using the glutes and the core to hold that neutral pelvis while we move the upper body. One more. Lower your hands down, shoulders right over your wrist creases. Left foot comes back, toes on the ground. Firm that left glute and then lift the leg without tipping the pelvis. So again, zipper that pubic bone up. Bend your knee, flex your foot. Think about that broom behind your back as you start to pulse the left glute. These pulses can be as teeny tiny as you want, but really think left glute, so that we're not relying on the hamstring to do this movement. Press evenly into your hands. Notice if you're favoring one hand. Keep lifting your throat. Release it down. Any of those three options, you can take cat-cow. You can go to child's pose, or you can come to downward dog. If you're in downward dog, lift up those hip creases. Lift up your front ribs toward the back of your body so we're not sinking the chest down low. One more breath wherever you are. On an exhale, walk your feet back to the front of the mat. Bend your knees in that hinging forward fold. Press into the feet, rise to stand. Imagine someone lifting you up by your fingertips. Exhale, sit back into the hips, really hinge. Notice where your knees end up. Step to your plank pose. Knees can be up or down in plank. Lift your throat so the head doesn't drop down. Draw those pelvic points in. Lower your knees, squeeze your glutes. Exhale, lower the rest of the way without letting your shoulders roll forward. So shoulders are going to stay away from the ground. Head comes down. Arms come along the sides of your body. Lift up that low belly and squeeze your glutes, peeling the shoulders away from the ground. Squeezing those shoulder blades in, so we're retracting the scapula. Keep your chin towards your throat and keep lifting the belly. Hands come under the shoulders. Lift back to quadruped, back to hands and knees. Right foot steps through. This time we'll tuck the left toes. Lift up for that same type of low lunge, checking that upright pelvis. Draw those pelvic points in. Reach your arms up. Lift the whole rib cage up and away from the pelvis. Squeeze that left glute. We'll take a little side bend. Right hand will grab that left wrist. Lift it up a little bit. So we're elevating this left scapula, gliding it up and side bending a little bit toward the right. As you side bend, make sure nothing changes in the pelvis and nothing changes in the ribs. So we're zippering that whole front body up and just coming into this lateral stretch, this side body stretch. Come back up. Lower your hands down. We're gonna scoot our left knee even closer toward the left hand, kick your left foot out to the side, and we'll come to modified side plank. Our right foot will step back. Right hand comes to the right hip. Focus on this left shoulder. We wanna make sure that the shoulder's right over that wrist crease, not too far forward. And really think about this left shoulder blade squeezing in toward the spine. So we've got this really stable scapula holding us in place. Left ear will release to the shoulder, glutes are on, and we'll keep that neutral pelvis. So think about drawing those pelvic points in, zipping the pubic bone up toward the belly so that we're not tipping the pelvis or arching the low back. If you're feeling really steady, right arm can reach up. And if you can hold that left scapula on the ribs, you can lift up that right leg. Good, if that right foot was up, lower it back down. Right hand comes back to the mat, so does that right knee, and we'll switch sides. Left foot steps through. Tuck the right toes, lift up for that low lunge. Check that pelvis here, make sure it's not tipping. Zipper the pubic bone up and firm that right glute, so we're still stretching the front of that right hip. Reach the arms up. Reach the fingertips up. Left hand grabs that right wrist. Pull up so that right scapula moves a little bit higher into elevation. And we'll take this nice lateral stretch, this side body stretch over to the left so that we get a stretch in the right side of the body. Keep squeezing that right glute. Come back up, lower the hands. Right knee scoots closer to that right hand. Kick your right foot out to the side to give yourself a little kickstand as this left foot steps back, modified side plank. Right shoulder is right over that wrist crease. And again, focus on that right shoulder blade. We want to squeeze it in like we're retracting it in toward the spine, holding that really stable position for our shoulder blade. Right ear will release to the shoulder. Glutes are active. Now instead of just zipping pubic bone to the belly button, I want you to think of zipping up from the pubic bone all the way to the sternum so the front body stays in nice and tight. You can reach that left arm up. You can reach the left leg up, but hold everything as strong as you can. If that left leg was up, lower it down. Left hand and left knee come back to quadruped. Take any option. You can take child's pose, cat-cow, or downward dog. One more breath wherever you are. Walk your feet back up towards your hands. Bent knee, forward fold. Really work on that hip hinge or that triple flexion in the ankles, knees, and hips. Press into your feet, rise to stand. Release your arms. Moving into high lunge, we'll step the ball of our right foot back, bending both knees so we're evenly weighted in both feet. Pelvis stays level, so draw those pelvic points in. Reach the arms up, and again, imagine someone lifting you up by your fingertips, so your scapula want to elevate, gliding up toward the ears, zipping that pubic bone up. Turn toward the side of your mat, arms will come out to the sides. Bend your knees coming into a squat. Think about that broom behind your back here so that we're not out of alignment. Broom would touch the back of your skull, your shoulder blades, and your sacrum. Reach the arms out. Left arm will come up and over as we side bend to the right. So that same lateral stretch we did in low lunge, back to center. Right arm comes up and over, side bend to the left. Back to center one more time, side bend to the right. Back to center. Side bend to the left, so you should be getting a little stretch in the sides of the ribs. Back to center, straighten your legs, release your arms, step it back to the top of the mat. Check in with that upright pelvis, left foot steps back, high lunge, draw those pelvic points in, reach the arms up. Lift the whole rib cage up and away from the pelvis. Holding this high lunge, glutes stay active, pelvic bowl stays upright. Turn to the side of your mat. Externally rotate the hips to whatever degree feels comfortable as you bend for that squat. Again, zipper that pubic bone up. Keep the glutes nice and active as the arms reach out. We're gonna side bend to the right, stretching the left side of the body back to center. Side bend to the left, back to center. One more each side. Side bend to the right, back to center. Side bend to the left, back to center. Straighten your legs, release your arms, step it back to the top of the mat. From the top of our mat, this time we'll step our right foot back for warrior two. Right toes face the side of the mat, left knee is bent. Check that pelvic bowl, make sure it's not tipping forward or back. We want to keep the glutes nice and strong so that the pelvis doesn't wiggle as we move the upper body. So very similar to that side bend, we're gonna bring the right arm down, left arm up and over, let your right ear release to the shoulder, and we're getting that same side body stretch in the left side. Back to warrior two. Left forearm will come toward that left thigh, right arm stretches up and over, left ear releases to the shoulder. Squeeze this right glute. Back to warrior two. One more time. Reverse it, let the ear release. Keep drawing those pelvic points in. Warrior two. Variation, forearm to the thigh, right arm stretches up and over, getting a nice stretch in the right side of the body. Back to warrior two. Straighten that left leg, turn the left toes toward the side of the mat. So now we're just in a wider stance with the feet parallel. Bring one hand to the sacrum, the back of the pelvis, one hand to the pubic bone at the front of the pelvis, and just squeeze those hands together. Bend the right knee and move your right hip crease back. So we're hinging or flexing at that right hip for a side lunge. Keep that feeling of the broom behind your back. Side lunge to the left. Left hip crease moves back. Keep that feeling of the broom behind your back. Side lunge to the right. Hold that neutral pelvis. Side lunge to the left. Stand up, you can release your arms, step it back to the top of the mat. Left foot steps back, warrior two. Check that pelvic bowl. We really want to draw those two pelvic points in, zipper the pubic bone up toward the belly button. Reach the arms out. Reverse it, left arm comes down, right arm stretches up and over. Try to reach that right shoulder blade like we're trying to elevate it up toward the ear. Back to warrior two. Variation, right forearm to your thigh, left arm up and over. Same thing with this left shoulder blade. Try to reach it up toward the ear. Back to warrior two. One more time. Reverse it. Back to warrior two. Variation, forearm to your thigh, left arm up and over. Squeeze this left glute. Back to warrior two. Straighten that right leg. Turn the right toes forward so our feet are parallel. One hand to the pubic bone, one hand to the sacrum. Give a little squeeze so we hold that neutral pelvis. Left knee bends, hinge at the hips. So we're thinking about moving the hips or the butt back, 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 pressing into the pinky toe side of that right foot. And then switch, bend into the right knee. Right hip crease moves back. Try not to tip the pelvis here. Side lunge to the left. Hold that feeling of the broom behind your back. Side lunge to the right. Stand up, step it back to the top of the mat. Coming into chair pose, feet can be about hips distance apart, and we'll hinge at the hips. So let's bring our fingers right to our hip creases where our femur meets the hips and hinge back. So we're really using the glutes anytime we hinge at the hips. Hands can come to your heart, arms can reach up. You can keep your hands at the pelvis, maybe front and back or side to side, wherever you'd like. Really using the glutes as we hinge. As you inhale, straighten your legs. You can stay here or press into the big toes. Lift your heels. As you exhale, lower the heels. Sit back for chair. So again, hip creases move back. We're hinging at the hips. Glutes kick on. Inhale, straighten your legs. Stay here or press into the big toes. Lift your heels. Exhale, lower the heels. Sit back for chair. Keep that broom behind your back. Good, press into the feet, rise to stand as you inhale. Lift the heels, press into the big toes. Exhale, back to chair. 2 more, a little bit faster. Press into the feet, lift the heels. Exhale, sit back for chair. Really keep those glutes on. 1 more, press into the feet, rise to stand. Lift the heels, press into the big toes. Exhale, sit back for chair. Hold here. Hands can stay where they are, or you can bring your hands to your heart. Keep hinging at the hips. Notice where the knees are. They should be over the ankles. We're gonna hold the pelvis here. Lift just the right heel up. Lower down. Lift the left heel. Lower down. Lift the right heel. Lower down. Lift the left heel. Lower down. 1 more. Lift the right heel. Lower down. Lift the left heel. Lower down. Straighten your legs. Release your arms. You can shake it out a little bit. We'll come onto our backs. Bending the knees, feet on the mat. Checking in with that triple S again. Back of the skull is on the mat. Shoulder blades are scapula and our sacrum right above our tailbone. Pick up your right foot. So we're flexing that right hip. Externally rotate. Cross the ankle over the thigh. You can take your right hand and press that right thigh away if that feels good. But make sure as we press the right thigh away, the pelvis doesn't swivel. So we keep that feeling of those 2 pelvic points drawing in. If you want to move a little bit further into your stretch, goalpost your arms, bending the elbows, bring the arms up toward the face, and then pick up that left foot. So that will just help us to go a little bit deeper into that right hip stretch. If you're taking this goalpost option, make sure the shoulder blades stay down and don't pop up. Focus on your breath. See if you can slow it down, make it bigger. If that left foot was up, release it down. We're going to bring that right knee back in toward the chest and begin to circle this right hip. Try to circle the hip joint without moving the pelvis. So the circles might need to be a little bit smaller than you think. Release it down and we'll switch. Pick up that left foot, so we're flexing at the left hip. Externally rotate the left hip. Cross that left ankle over the right thigh. Same option to press that left thigh away with the hand if that feels like a good place to stretch the left hip, or goalpost the arms. Pick up that right foot to go a little bit further into the stretch. Check and make sure the sacrum stays down, the scapula and the back of the skull. And try to deepen your breath. Bigger inhales, bigger exhales. Release that right foot down if it was up. Keep that left knee up and we'll start to circle that left hip joint. Really try to hold that pelvis still so it's just that left hip joint doing the circling. Release it down. If it would feel good, you can hug your knees in toward your chest, maybe rock side to side, or you can take happy baby, picking up the feet and rocking side to side. Anything that feels good. We'll end in a quick Shavasana. You are welcome to keep the feet on the mat. Arms can rest anywhere on your sides. You can have them somewhere on your body. Maybe extending the legs all the way out. Just see whatever option feels best. And we'll close our eyes. Try to soften your forehead. Soften your jaw. Take a quick scan of the body from the top of your head down to your toes. Noticing any tension you may be holding on to. Take a big inhale through your nose. Slowly sigh it out through your mouth. When you feel ready, we'll end in a seated position, meeting there with our eyes closed. Taking a moment to thank yourself for your practice. Sending one grateful thought out into the universe. Thank you for practicing with me today.